Okay.
All right, we're live.
Woohoo! So this week we looked at lesson plans according to what group of students we were looking at, either the fifth graders or the second graders. And we looked at lesson plans specifically to the standards. And we each picked one for each standard. So that's what we're sharing today.
Yay.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first
Okay.
because I'm the odd man out with fifth graders. To be quite honest, just to start off, I really struggled locating the math ones because reading the code and identifying what it was and then going through and trying to narrow it down, finding it, I couldn't figure out which one it was. So I'm still working on that aspect. But I do have a good example and a bad example from the literacy to standards. So I'm going to start there, and then I'll add the math ones into my notes. The first one is actually, and I'm going to read off the standards so I can be sure to say it right. Oh, come back. Where did you go? Wait for it. Wait for it. Right here in front of my face. Aha, there it is. So the first one is talking about determining a theme of a story, drama, or poem from details in the text, including how characters in a story or drama respond to challenges, or how the speaker in a poem reflects upon a topic, and being able to summarize the text. The lesson plan that I found is called Language Arts Fables, and it's by Catherine Myers. And this is my example of a good lesson plan. I feel like if I was subbing, I would be able to come in and use this lesson plan and totally know what I'm supposed to do. The way the teacher laid it out, they were very clear in their description and what the goal and outcome was. They didn't have too many outcomes, which is something that I found in a lot of the other ones. There was just, it wasn't very well focused. So for this one, she describes exactly what they did in a previous lesson. She says they've learned about how to use characters, words, and actions to identify character traits, and it will be used during this lesson to identify the theme or the author's message in the fable. And then she just has one goal. Students will identify the theme of a text, which I thought was great because at the end of the day, if that's, your goal, make that the only goal. That's kind of what we learned about in the very beginning with that teacher who had all of the cutting out the circle, and then I don't know if you guys remember that lesson from the very beginning, but anyway, I really like that this person was very focused. And then it says, in the objectives, given a fable, students will complete a graphic organizer to analyze a character in order to identify and write the theme of the text with 100% accuracy. That, I feel like she could have included what kind of graphic organizer, but later when she's going through what she needs to do throughout the class, she describes exactly how they're going to break it down. And then for the for her opening introduction, she has it very well scripted, like even outlining the kinds of responses she usually expects from her students. So thumbs up if you understand, thumbs in the middle if you're kind of sure, and then thumbs down if you don't understand, which as a sub, knowing the language that the kids are used to, that would be huge. And then, yeah, she just goes on and continues to integrate things, including she refers to a flip chart that she developed previously. and has created. So she walks you through it and how you're supposed to explain it through each step of the character analysis. And yeah, she just does a really good job of outlining every step of the way, from introduction through guided practice to the individual practice. Everything is very well outlined with, what she generally imagines the students will respond, how they'll respond. And she also does a really good job of outlining the materials, which my next one, that was a bad example, did not do. This teacher also went kind of the extra mile and included YouTube videos and text-to-speech software for the different fables that she was going to use. So not only does she say, hey, we use these books, but she's included different representations of the books she wants you to use, just in case. So that was a winning one. Yay, her. And then the other one, which I really is not a fan of, has to do with a narrative, like writing a narrative and describing an event using details in sequence. So kind of like the book that I did. Sorry, hold on. Kind of like the book that I did last week for the book builder, my trip to the museum, where it was talking about a whole sequence of events. And that's what the standard that I addressed is the same one that this person was addressing. The problems that and it's actually just called narrative assignment, but the problems that I found were that there were a lot of expected outcomes and a lot of prerequisites and a lot of goals, which made it really confusing as to what she wanted the outcome of this lesson to be. The plan for the lesson was also really broad. She was talking about how she was just going to let the students kind of use the entire classroom as a writing lab, which is great, but she didn't outline how. She talks about she wants them to work in partners and work in groups and work by themselves, and that they can work by themselves anywhere in the class they want where they feel comfortable. But she doesn't outline, for this amount of time we're doing this, for this amount of time we're going to be in partners editing, for this, she didn't really provide any structure. And it just said that students would be able to edit their work and go back and create a strong piece of writing and create a narrative. And she just kind of kept repeating that, which if I was walking into that, I'd be like, well, do they do this normally? Are there rules for, just opening up the entire classroom? What's going on? And she didn't really provide any tools, any guidelines as to where they were supposed to be drawing from for this narrative, what they were supposed to be doing, really, other than writing a narrative with a sequence of events that was well written. But she doesn't define what well written is. She doesn't define anything else or give you any tools. So it was not my favorite example.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that's my examples.
I can go next.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first two that I'll talk about are the math ones. The first one that I found was looking closely at GeoBlocks. And of the two math, this is the one that I liked the best. This one was more of just focusing on what 3D and 2D shapes are, what is the difference, The teacher does starts off, by introducing the term geometry. What does it mean? Does anybody know? And then she goes into, a little bit of detail, but not too much because these are second grade kids. This is just something that they're just starting to learn. The thing that I liked about this one was that the kids had the 3D shapes, and they were able to have them in front of them. They were able to touch them and, physically feel what they looked like. Count the faces, and the teacher walked them through the process and talked about the different kinds of shapes, and really let them have a hands-on experience. And the goal was she was going to have them, as part of the writing for the math, was fill out a graphic organizer comparing and contrasting the differences between the 2D and 3D shapes, with the final task being that they draw their own 3D shapes. Not to make them look perfect, just to get an idea, more of play with what they are. The second math was called Roll and Double. So this was kind of like a lesson that was used as a game to focus on the doubling, using mental math basically to double up the like 5 plus 5 is 10, 6 plus 6 is 12, and so the pre-taught was a book that the teacher read, and about the doubling pot, that's what she called it. And the one thing I didn't like about this lesson, like if I, as Katie mentioned, if I were a sub and I came in and had to teach this, I don't know that I wouldn't know everything going on, because the lesson plans were just kind of, they were just kind of there. There was no real detail. It was like, okay, well, it's a game. The kids use, manipulatives to build. Then they need to double it. Okay, well, was there a lot of, and in the lesson plan there was just a little bit of modeling, a little bit of guided practice, and not a lot, I felt, for second graders. I didn't think that it was maybe enough. I mean, maybe it was. I'm not sure. So I didn't particularly care for this one, and I feel like maybe there was something better that she could have done in order to get those addition facts stuck in the head of the kids. But so that was the one I felt was least effective. The two literacy ones. My first one was Fable, the moral of a story. Now this lesson plan was cool because, and I'm not sure if this classroom was an ASL classroom, if it was the children that were deaf, it didn't say, but a lot of it is heavily focused on ASL, and watching videos, using ASL, reading it, signing, to discuss fables. And one of the really cool parts to this was that the teacher was really intent on kids manifesting their own learning. There was a ton of flexibility in this lesson as far as examples and modeling and options for independent practice, because that was the main goal of the teacher, was to have these kids do what was comfortable for them, what would be best for them. But because it was mostly ASL geared, I didn't feel like it was the most effective for all kids. My last one was called Brainstorming Personal Narratives, and this one was to understand the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. The teacher knew that flexibility was necessary for all students, because she had an array of kids in the class. Then the cool thing that I liked the best about this too was when they're talking about personal narratives, the teacher has gestures of how to remember, putting your narrative in order. Tapping of the head is what's the first thing that you do, and a wheel was the second, like a movie gesture. It's the second thing, and she lists every step and the motions and how to carry out the process, what to talk about, which you know, I was picturing myself being, you know, the second grader in the classroom watching the teacher do this, going, I can totally see, you know, how this would work and how, you know, so then when a kid's stuck maybe on, I don't know what to do for the second paragraph, that simple gesture can start their memory rather than saying, well, remember the second paragraph is this. And it's, I thought that was a, a cool way of showing how to organize the paper. Um, and then, so they started off too with a book about a girl, and it talks about, gives her personal narrative story. And so when they're all done with their brainstorming part using a graphic organizer, the teacher comes back to that story, and they talk about, and they put a chart up labeled what others don't know. So what she has the students do at the end is on a sticky note write down their topic that they chose for their personal narrative and put it up on this chart so the other kids can kind of see, you know, what maybe they struggle with or what's an experience they had. And even though these are only, you know, 7-year-old kids, it kind of brings a community in the classroom. And so I thought this lesson was cool all the way around just for that purpose too, is that they not only are writing, they're also learning about each other and building a community in their classroom, which I thought was really neat. So
Sweet.
yeah.
Great. I also did the fable, the moral of the story. It was so specific but still flexible, and I really like that because it's definitely something that you can just apply, like read and apply to your classroom, but change it up a little bit for your students. And so I really like how it was written and everything. It was, because sometimes, you know, like sometimes it's nice to have loose lesson plans, but this one is, I don't know how to just like specific, but still loose.
Right. There's still that. I get what you mean. There's still that
Structured flexibility.
Yes. Structured flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like how much she has the students reflecting, personally reflecting, and I think that in second grade, it's, I don't know, you don't really think about having the kids like reflect on themselves and culture and all this other stuff, but it's really important. And so she poses questions in here to have the students reflect on what they liked, what they didn't like, and what they took away from it, as well as there's this it says they can work individually or in pairs, but also having them work with their classmates, because each classmate is different, so they're going to have, you know, like fables have a moral of the story, but like how you take away that moral would be different or could be different for each student. So like having them talk to each other and just gain different perspectives, and I really like that about this lesson. I really like this lesson. The other one that I did was build your own book, which is kind of what we did, but this one is about, they read a story and then each student makes their own sequel to the story. And I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot better than just having them go and make their own story, because it offers a little bit more guidance. Because I know that it was really hard for me to just make up a story. Like that was half the battle, and this way at least it offers some kind of like guidance in, this is what we're going to be talking about, but you can do your own like interpretation and still go through the whole writing process and all that stuff.
It's like a prompt instead of a blank.
And I really like that a lot better. I think that might be a little easier. I don't know, but I like that better, that you read this book in the beginning and then you write your sequel. And it's really interesting because there's still a lot of variability within that, because it could go anywhere. And then for the math ones, I did the UDL Academy Southbridge Simple Subtraction through 20. And so this lesson starts out with a video. It's just a video about, they use balloons, and it's just about subtraction, simple subtraction, which I didn't really like because I think that if you put in a video, it should be of substance. Like, it was a good video for the very basic, but it was kind of boring, and they even played, like, sounded like elevator music in the back, and that's not something that a second grader would especially be interested in. It was good. There were really good visuals, but I think that definitely could have, put a more interesting video in there. But what I really liked about this was that they do like the paper where you like split into 3, and then you do the, like, everybody does it, and they show the 3 different ways to do subtraction through a picture and the manipulatives and number lines, I think, yeah. And everybody writes down what the teacher's writing down about each one, but then on their own they get to choose which ones work best for them, which I think is really helpful, because I just remember in elementary school about math was like, it was one way to learn something, and that was the only way. And it wasn't until like 157 or 257 that I even realized there was other ways to do division, or there were other ways to show subtraction. And it wasn't until college that I learned that. And I think that it's important to show different ways, because everybody learns differently. I don't know if I would have learned better or worse with a different model, but just being introduced to that and having that option, I think is really important. And so that's what I really liked about this, was just having the different options and according to the students. And then the other math one was it's called ordering rectangles, and it's talking about, like, so you have like a piece of paper, and then you cut out the paper, and there's all these different rectangles that are all rectangles by the definition of what a rectangle is, but of different sizes. Like, one can be a square. I think a square is still a rectangle.
Yes.
Or one can be okay. And one can be really long, or one could be short, but they're all still rectangles. And then to have the students lay them out in what they think from biggest to smallest, which is really interesting, because it depends on what you see as biggest. And I think they have students working with partners and discussing, like, why this one is the biggest and why this one's the smallest. So, like, one could be like a big square or a really long rectangle, and they could think, like, the square one is bigger than this one because it's shorter, and that's why. Or just according to, like, the height or the width. And then, so that would be really interesting to see how students reason their way through which one is the biggest. And they did mention in here there's no right answer, which is important. And then they use tiles to cover up the piece of paper, so they can count the number of tiles to see, is this one actually bigger, and which is area, which is talking about area. But in this lesson plan, they didn't. It seemed like saying that, the amount of tiles on here covers the area of it just seemed kind of like an afterthought, because it was just in the lesson plan, at least, it was like one sentence at the end saying, when we find out how much space a flat shape covers or takes up, we are finding the area of the shape. And then it's like the end of the lesson plan, which I think if they're going to incorporate that, they should do that either earlier on or do a little bit more with that, I think.
Unless it was the introduction of area, and they were
Yeah.
using what they already know to set up a lesson that was coming like
Yeah,
next.
I guess, yeah, I think. But I wasn't, yeah, I don't know. I just thought, just because when I first read through the lesson first, I didn't think that it was, I mean, I guess it never explicitly said that it was about area, so, um,
Yeah,
but,
I see what you mean. Kind of like how it's just, yeah, there it is, and then you're like, but wait,
yeah.
There's so
we didn't,
much more.
right? And yeah, like here it is. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I just thought that maybe that could be included a little bit more, or and they also said to think about. They told the kids to think about it as a chocolate bar and how much chocolate you would want in determining what is the biggest and what is the smallest, which is fun. Like it adds a little fun aspect in it, and you could always actually include chocolate bars.
Yeah.
Which would be fun. But yeah, probably my least favorite lesson plan. But I feel like that section was hard in the second grade. The reason with shapes, that was harder for me in all of the lessons. But yeah,
Yeah. That's that. Yeah. I had the roll and double one first, and had to kind of go back and read a couple more before I found the GeoBlocks one. So yeah,
yeah.
that one was a little bit tougher.
So I think that's it.
Sweet. And
Okay.
then for the next section of this, we compare our lessons that we wrote, correct? Like for the
For the
next part of
assignment
the
for Sunday?
assignment?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
You're writing the reflection on which one
Yeah.
you felt was most effective compared to your lesson plan.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again? I thought we were comparing it to our lesson plan from weeks 4 through 7.
Yes. You're right.
Okay. Sorry. I was really confused. I was like,
No, all right. Nope, that's it.
Okay.
So,
Sweet. Alrighty then, folks. I think we're done. Who was taking notes? That was Nicole, right?
Yeah.
yes.
So I will go ahead and stop broadcast, and then if you want to throw that link in there, it'll be all hunky-dory.
Okay.
Yay.
Yay.
All right,
Next
ladies.
week.
See you
Yep,
next week.
next week. Bye.
Okay, bye.